Hello and welcome to Setting the Stage, episode 66, Casey and Liara. Casey is a life coach who does his life coaching through RPG sessions, where players will get incentives within the game based off of how they're doing on their life goals. So we're going to hear Casey talk about that and his world of Liara. Listen in. I'm here with Casey today to talk about his world, Liara, and some other cool D&D related stuff. So, hi Casey, how you doing?
Good. How are you doing, Isaac?
I'm good. My daughter has got a rabbit, and we're trying to introduce it to the other pets in the household. So we had it in the room with the cat, which didn't go very well. The cat was just trying to get out the whole time. So.
Oh, jeez.
No progress made, but the rabbit's getting more used to the house and is coming out of the cage a bit more now. So that part's at least happening.
Yeah, that's good.
Well, yeah. So how we always start. Who is Casey outside of RPGs?
Yeah. So, I guess a good way to describe who I am is, I think that a good way to describe almost every person is I'm a mess. My life is just crazy and everything's going nuts, but things are also good. There are fun things, but there are certain other things that are like, oh man, this is a mess. But let's see. Right now, I actually work doing basically like therapy-esque life coaching, where I'll work with people and I actually bring TTRPGs, the tabletop role-playing games, into it, and kind of use that as a thing that I use to help. Specifically, I mainly work with young men, just kind of able to help them kind of have some motivation, but also have some fun, because there's a lot of people I tend to work with people struggling with addiction, and there are a lot of young men who are struggling with that who also can like these things or could find some enjoyment from them. So it's a great way to kind of connect people and do that. Other than that, I'm 25. I've been working in this field for like almost coming up on 6 years. Just kind of working in a therapy-related field. I've loved telling stories since I was in elementary school. Just loved telling stories. I had never tried like D&D forever until I was in like high school. But I've always just loved being a storyteller. I always loved helping people. So the two mixing together was really simple. And let's see, the only other really cool thing, I guess, going on is that I got married a little less than a year ago.
Woo!
Thank you. And I actually just moved, so I'm kind of in this state of, oh man, like I hope everything's put together, and I hope my neighbors aren't going to be like, dude, this guy needs to stop talking down there. But mostly,
I was going to ask about that after the interview, because I can see an empty bookshelf behind you.
Oh yep, so. Yeah. This is my empty bookshelf that these got moved in, and we're going to film, and it's going to look awesome. But we are moving here, and then I'm headed from here. I'm going to drive 7 hours tomorrow to visit somebody, and I'm leaving at like 9 in the morning or so. I'm driving 7 hours, and then I'll be headed back this way.
Okay, yeah, that's a big drive, but that's also the United States for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's a routine thing I do for weekend trips, is head out on Friday and just drive all day after work and get there at like midnight or something.
Oh, yeah.
Oh man. Yeah, so it sounds like you started on the therapy lane very early in your life. Do you have a license for that? Were you starting as like the life coach and then transitioning? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, so I when I was growing up, I was kind of what people would like, I think a lot of people can relate to this, the therapy friend. Like everybody who's like, oh, like all your friends will come to you and be like, oh, my day was this way, and they'll talk to you about things. I was kind of that for my friends, but I'd never considered it a route I was going to go in my life until I was nearing the end of high school, and I ended up just getting super, super sick. Developed some chronic health and mental health issues during that time that just got really, really bad. So my life just took a whole different direction, but everything's been really awesome since then. I've found really cool things after the fact of kind of dealing with the struggle for about 6 or so years. But during that time that I was kind of just struggling, I could barely leave my house. I couldn't find a job. And my mom worked for a therapy company. And she said, hey, they're looking for a guy to edit podcasts. Would you be interested? And I was like, I was like, oh, like I don't have a job, and I like money would be cool, so sure, like I can do that from home when I can't really do anything else. And so I started editing podcasts, and then less than a year later, they were like, hey, would you be interested in being trained as a life coach? And I said, well, like sure, I enjoy helping people. This could be kind of cool. So I got trained as a life coach, and I'm kind of at the point of debating between going to kind of get my license, because I have completed a bachelor's degree on the way towards getting a license, so I'd need like 2 more years. But there have been some kind of things that are, it's kind of the question of what you want to do with your career, of if you want to kind of be a little bit stuck in some of the rules of therapy.
Right, yeah.
Or there's things that you can do as a life coach that you can't as a therapist. And so it's kind of just that question that I'm at right now, but I've been trying to help people and really be as much of a, even if I'm going towards therapy or not, I might as well start helping people now. There's no reason.
Yeah. And I think life coaching has obviously a lot of similarities. You're aware of that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was aware that it's much less of a regulatory hurdle to get into that career instead of therapy.
Yes, and it's also a lot less strict in the way that you can, how best to put it? There's so many hurdles that you have to jump through, even when you're already a therapist, of like regular tests and all these things that change, and so much stuff that can go on there.
Yeah, because therapy is like medical care, whereas life coaching is very similar, but it's more like, you go to the doctor and you have a bad back, or you can go to a massage therapist for a bad back, and they sort of both help the problem, but one of them is just gonna. There's different tools they have available to look at the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a pretty good way to put it. Is kind of that, like, oh, am I going to go to this person who, like, that doctor, or am I going to go to this person who's a massage therapist? They could probably deal with the same thing. It just kind of depends on what you care about seeing as the certification, I guess you could say.
Yeah. So I know you use D&D and role-playing games as part of your therapy, but I wanted to go through your pathway to getting into RPGs first before we get into the union.
Yeah.
So what got you started playing?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I loved telling stories. In fact, my mom would tell everybody, and I forgot this until she mentioned it when I started getting into Dungeons & Dragons, but apparently when I was young, and I can remember some of these, whenever I was in the car, I'd start basically doing an improv D&D session with my friends in the car or on the bus, driving anywhere. I'd just start basically being like, I'm telling a story, but do you want to do option A, B, C, or D, rather than giving just free reign. And I did that on the bus for years. And then I kind of just stopped. And then near the end of middle school, beginning of high school, I had a really good friend of mine who reached out and was like, hey, Casey, do you want to try this thing called Dungeons and Dragons? And I was like, I've heard the name, and that's about all I know about this, is that I've heard of the name. But sure, like, you're my friend. That sounds like fun. So we showed up at his house, me and two of my other friends, and he DM'd, and we spent like 7 hours trying to just figure out how to make characters and start playing. And then we just kind of jumped in, we played, and after that very first session, I was basically like, oh, like, this is so fun, but I want to be where he is. I want to be the DM. Because I just have always loved making worlds and things of that sort. Like, I'm a writer, and I love writing fantasy and sci-fi and things of that sort, and it's just so fun for me to make the world. So I was like, that would be so fun to be where he is. And so I started quickly doing that for a bunch of my friends, and I've been DMing for close on, I think it's 12, almost 13 years now.
Wow, cool. Yeah. That's great. I'm glad you're loving the hobby.
Yeah, it's fun.
What systems have you tried?
So a lot of mine were, so I started with Dungeons & Dragons. I then played a little bit of Call of Cthulhu, a little bit of Pathfinder, and a little bit of, I want to say it's Starfinder, but it might be another one of those sci-fi. basically things that are on that similar. And then recently, I've gotten really into Candela Obscura, that was made by Daring to Press. Critical Role made Candela Obscura, and Daggerheart, which they also made. Just really liked those, and thought they were really fun, interesting systems that also have some kind of flexibility that I liked.
Yeah. It's cool stuff. It's all sorts of things that D&D created with trying to change the license.
Yeah, for sure.
Everybody's running away from them.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so how does role-playing in therapy, as I know it, is something that happens fairly often for people that have like phobias or PTSD, I think is another one that gets treated that way, or OCD, sort of a lot of fear disorders where they're trying to sort of expose people with something imaginary, is, I believe, the intention from when I've seen role-playing used in therapy. Role-playing games, obviously different, because when you're role-playing Imagine a Spider for someone who has arachnophobia, you're not rolling to slay the spider or anything like that. It's just imagine a spider, and then we'll work up to look at a picture of a spider and so on.
Yeah.
So how does that... I guess first question is my description accurate?
Yeah. Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, cool. And how does that fit within your paradigm for using RPGs in therapy?
Yeah. So what I found is that I love the storytelling of like Dungeons and Dragons or tabletop RPGs, and I found that I didn't want to sacrifice that for that kind of a therapy, almost that you were talking about there. And so, but I do know that roleplay is used a lot for those kinds of situations of like, especially helping people to imagine and get into a mode where they can see kind of what's happening, and you can build it up to kind of like you said, like, now I'm going to show you a picture of a spider. But one of the way that I tend to use it is I use tabletop RPGs as a motivation system for people. Okay. So I tend to meet with people one-on-one for kind of a life coaching and helping them specifically like address the root causes of addiction or something else. And then throughout the week, I'll give them things that they need to work on throughout the week. And then when they show up to the session that we would play for the TTRPG later, depending on how well they did there, they will basically get rewards that they can directly translate into basically like an improvement point system for the game. So rather than traditional level ups, in a sense, I tend to do, at least in these groups, because it helps to motivate people to basically be like, oh, did you do on your goals? Well, here's this many points that you can distribute between leveling up your HP, leveling up this, and basically increasing your character's level, which also adds, for when it's a bunch of young men in a room, that adds some competitive spirit when one guy sees somebody else do amazing and they're like, I want that. Like, I gotta do better now. And so they'll start just doing a ton better, and it kind of helps everybody to kind of just level up and kind of have that motivation to kind of push towards them.
Okay. I think I talked about that. My wife is a school teacher, and I talked about like introducing competition to motivate the boys in the classroom.
Yeah.
It works sometimes. Sometimes it's more disruptive.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's working with a lot more students. So
yeah,
and you have a more controlled space for what you're doing, so it makes sense it would work better there.
Yeah.
So the point-based system is like you give them goals outside of the game. Like, give me an example.
So in general, what I'll do is I'll set up 6 goals with people that are their basic things that they should be trying to do every day, because they're kind of time-tested goals that'll help most people. So one of them is like serving someone every day, even if it's something tiny. One of them is doing something action-related with their body, even if it's something of as simple as like, I'm going to do like 5 push-ups. Doesn't have to be anything crazy. And then the final one that I tend to do is a new pattern, where if somebody is basically struggling with something, we'll say, oh, okay, well, if you're struggling with that, if you're trying to remove that from your life, or at least take it out significantly, what are you replacing it with? and the replacement then becomes that goal. Whether that's, you're struggling with some sort of an addiction, you're trying to remove that, and to take up that time, maybe you'll read a book or something like that.
Okay.
And kind of offer something like that. And so that tends to be what I do. And sometimes during when I have an individual session with somebody, I'll say, okay, awesome. Well, here's 3 things that I'd like you to work on for this week, because it helps people to have actionable things, but not too many actionable things, or they'll just never do anything. So I'll give them actionable things, and depending on if they worked on those, they'll gain as well.
Okay, cool. Yeah, replacement therapy, I have a funny example of that for my wife's grandmother, where she was addicted to tobacco and used replacement therapy, where instead of smoking, she would go work on a puzzle. And she just did that and would start like gluing them and hanging them around the house until like all the walls were filled. And then she moved on to making doll houses until she had filled like, her 3 kids had moved out. So she was basically just filling their rooms with doll houses. Then moved on from that to video games, where she just play a video game. And, this was just like going on for decades, right? She was just like, that's what she did. She found a replacement therapy, and it just, she kept doing it until she filled up his space with it. So I guess once she'd filled up her living room with video games, maybe she would have moved on to something else.
Oh, yeah. And I like that you mentioned the like puzzles and doll houses, because I found that tends to be the most helpful things are things that are creative. So it actually fits really well into the tabletop role-playing space, because you're doing something creative that requires your attention, rather than for a lot of things, whether you're addicted to something or you're trying to beat a bad habit, your brain, if it starts going that way, you'll get stuck in it. So you want to focus it on something else. So I think that's awesome. You mentioned puzzles and doll houses, because it's a creative thing. You have to sit down, you have to work on it, you have to think about it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We don't usually think of role-playing as creative, because there isn't really a product you can present to someone at the end, but it is a creative experience when you're building a story. So even if it's just for the people you're playing with.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that.
For this point-based system, have you heard of the Habatica game?
Yes, I actually have. Yeah, I think I've downloaded it once and kind of looked it over.
Yeah. I used it a few years ago, and then I stopped because it wasn't working for me anymore. But it sounds similar to that, where you sort of have goals that you put into the game, and then when you complete your goals, you get points, which you can use to like get better equipment or level up your character and stuff like that. And then that makes you better at slaying the monsters in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That's basically what I do. I've found that the only hiccup that I ever find with doing it with guys is somebody will inevitably do really well on their goals for an extended period of time, be getting a ton of points, and they'll put it all into how much damage they can do. So then I'll be having one character who can deal so much more damage than everybody else. But that also is, again, that kind of competitive motivator of somebody else to be like, you just did 120 damage to this guy in one hit. I want to do that. How do I do that? And they'll start working on their goals.
Yeah. What system are you using for this? Because I know there's a ton of building point systems, but it seems like you're using D&D from what you'd said before.
So I originally used D&D until kind of like we mentioned, the stuff that's kind of been happening with the licensing and stuff with Dungeons & Dragons. And I switched over to using Daggerheart. But Daggerheart isn't meant to be an IP system. It's meant to be a level up system. So I adapted it and kind of took all the pieces and broke it down into, okay, like here's how many times you could improve this part of your character, improve this part of your character. And so, for instance, when I was talking about the damage, for Daggerheart, you increase your damage by upgrading your proficiency, which rather than in Dungeons & Dragons, it's like, oh, that's kind of what gives you a base increase to the things you're good at.
Yeah.
Proficiency is the number of dice you get to roll per primary weapon. So if your weapon was a D10 and you had 4 proficiency, you're rolling 4 D10 rather than just the 1.
Okay. In other building point systems that I've seen, there's sort of diminishing returns. So if you get like, the first level is 5, the second level is 10, the third level is 15, and so on. Is it that how it works in Daggerheart as well?
Well, so Daggerheart's mainly the level up system, but my IP system that I use, it's basically like that. If you want to get the next level, it costs you even more. If you want to get the next level of something, it costs you even more. Okay. But Daggerheart's built by a level up where it's mainly built on like milestone rather than XP, from what I've kind of seen and everything. And it's basically you reach a certain milestone, you level up to level 2. And
gotcha. Okay. And I think you might have said this before, but IP is incentive points. Is that right?
Improvement points.
Improvement points. Okay.
Yes.
I slotted in a word, but okay.
Oh, you're gotcha. Good. It's close enough. Yeah, you're good.
All right. And it sounds like the guys you're playing with like this. It's fun for them to be, I did 100 push-ups, so I get 5 points, or whatever it is.
Yeah, it's been actually one of the things that's been the coolest thing about it has been watching. And when I first tried this and first started doing it, I was like, this is kind of just a tester. We'll see if it even works. But everybody that I've ever had join within 2 weeks of coming, they're suddenly being like, okay, like I showed up the first time, I didn't have any goals done, but I saw other people getting their goals done and getting cool stuff. And so then the next week they'll have a little bit more, and then they'll be like, no, like I got to do this. So by the third time they come, they're either drastically increased where they're getting weeks where they got all 6 goals done every day of the week.
Mm-hmm. And I guess this is a constant problem for life coaches. What are you doing to keep people honest?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that I do to keep people honest is my weekly meetings with people. I have a weekly one-on-one meeting, or at least one weekly meeting. Sometimes people who want to do more, where I'll basically meet and actually talk with them and actually see things. And it's pretty easy to tell if somebody's lying to me, especially after like 1 week, 2 weeks, because you can kind of just tell, okay, there are inconsistencies in what you're saying, or you're even just emotionally, they might be a little bit off and a little bit different. And you can be like, okay, there's something going off. I, in fact, had a guy the other day that I was noticing. It's one of those things that for all TTRPG DMs, you might have that one player who starts getting a little too many crits. And this isn't exactly the outside of the game, but like getting a little too many crits, rolling high numbers a little too often. And so it's kind of one of those things of being like, okay, how do I approach this guy and be like, hey man, you're cheating in the game, but also you might be cheating with your how many points you're telling me you're getting each week.
Yeah. Because they're going to see you to improve their lives, not just to play D&D.
Yes,
that's a side part of it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, and I get what you're saying. That like usually people don't like lying, so often they'll come up with some way that isn't quite lying to describe what they're doing.
Yes.
But having a one-on-one meeting where there's no like social embarrassment from the situation makes sense, where people are more likely to tell you the truth.
Yeah.
And are you still doing life coaching outside of the RPG premise, where you're still just helping people the normal way?
Yeah. I find basically what I try and do is I'll have just life coaching sessions where I'll have people, because there are some people who are just going to be not really want the RPG sessions, but might just want to meet with me. So I'll do that outside and just do those. But I also have found that the thing that helps people most is to do both the RPG sessions and the weekly coaching sessions, so that I can kind of be like, okay, awesome, let's improve your life, and you have the motivation. Like, I'm going to help you to guide you to figure out what you want to do with your life to actually improve it, go in the direction you want to, and make the life you want to live. And we have the motivation of the sessions each week where you have something cool in those goals that you're kind of being pushed towards.
Okay. And how many sessions are you running a week for that?
So right now, I'm running 5 sessions. But I have the capacity and the plans to run 16.
Okay. Sounds like you wouldn't have a lot of time for one-on-one sessions at that point.
Well, yeah, but the sessions that I do tend to be only about 2 hours that I do the like TTRPG sessions. But then I have other time that I can throw at doing the one-on-one sessions, and not everybody wants to do one-on-one sessions.
Okay. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Yeah, that still sounds like an intense workload. I mean, that like 16 times 2 is 32 hours a week, right? But then you also have to come up with, adventures for all that make sense for wherever everyone's at, and do the check-ins with people, and do all the sort of admin work for handling that many separate characters, because 16, usually you're going to have like 4 or 5 players per session, right?
Yeah.
So that means you're managing like 80 people at most in that situation.
Yeah, it gets a hassle at points, but it's also something that I kind of thrive in, especially kind of doing that, especially because I'm a very improv-based person. So needing to schedule, I don't have to schedule out things too far, or like go too in depth with, here's how this session is going to go exactly, or here's what I want to do with this kind of a thing, and pretty improv, which has been really helpful.
And not like having too many clients is the worst problem to have in your life.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it would be cool if it caught on, and then you came up with like a sort of teaching method for getting other people to start using it. That would be really neat.
Yeah, that's kind of the plan. Is eventually I'll do that, which will be awesome.
Cool. Well, I think we're at the right point for you to give a more like official plug for how people can get into it. So you want to serve that up? Yeah.
If you're interested and kind of want to look at it, you can kind of find the basic information on my website, which is knightscastle.org. So it's like KNIGHTSKASTLE.org. And you'll kind of find the information on a little bit about the world and a little bit about other things. And some of the website is in progress as of this moment we're talking. I'll have more of it set up because my wife is a marketing major, and she was like, your website needs some help. So she's fixing it.
All right. Okay, I'm seeing it now. And yeah, nice.
Yeah. So there's ways to do both, like if somebody wants to do an initial thing with me, there's a free kind of consultation that people can do with me, and orientations, and there's plenty of free PDFs and things that are on there for both parents and people who are just trying to find some initial help and don't want to kind of go down the jump immediately into, I'm going to pay you for a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, this is great. This looks really nice. Got like little plans people can sign up for.
Oh, yeah.
Consultation with someone who doesn't look like you.
Oh, does it not look like me? Oh, it's just the image. I need to fix the images. Yes.
Yeah, it's a stock photo, but I mean that's what you use, right? That's why you get started. It's fun. Yeah, I just think it's funny because for this example you have here, you must have a photo that looks a lot like this one. It's just a guy staring at a computer.
Oh yeah, I could literally just have my wife walk in here and take a picture of me staring at a screen, and it would probably work.
Yeah, but you're moving in. You got other stuff to worry about right now. So,
yeah,
I get it.
Yeah.
No, this looks really good. I could easily see people liking this, and a lot of like my website, totally not professional. It's just a blog. I just throw stuff up there. It looks nice for what I'm doing. This looks like a business website. It's really cool. Good job.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, anything else you wanted to say about like the therapy side before we get into what's your campaign setting like?
No, I think I'm good. I think we can jump into campaign setting.
Okay, cool. So you said earlier that this campaign setting is the one you use for your therapy sessions, and I'm assuming that it's kind of the same. It's the same setting for each of the. You said you had 5 right now.
Yeah. So all 5 are set in the exact same setting, and they're all happening concurrently. So one group could do this, which will affect another group. But I never have it affect it to the point of it's going to totally derail what they're doing. But you could see like ripple.
Okay, so they're not all doing like the same campaign where you guys fought the dragon and then they fight the same dragon and they're just sort of going through the same steps. They're each all within the same timeline. It's just one group is over in France, one's in Spain, and others in Italy.
Yep.
Equivalent. Obviously, that's not what the country.
Yes, but yes, absolutely, that's exactly how it works.
All right. Well, starting off, world is called Liara, and your description of it sounds massive.
Oh yeah.
Most people do, like, Faerun as an example. It's like half of a continent is what they're doing. And you just went, let's do the whole world, 7 continents, tons of religions, tons of countries. It's so much stuff. So I want to dive into it, but I'm also curious, like, this seems way more like width over depth, kind of. And I'm assuming that you have deeper dives to the parts where the players are. Is that kind of the concept there?
Mm-hmm. So a lot of it comes into, I mentioned that I'm a very improv person. And so one of the things I do intentionally is when I'm creating a nation or something like that my players could explore, I'll give it some basic pieces, the things that I need, the meat and potatoes. And then when they're in there, things will start getting added as we're going that are things that will make it feel real. For instance, I had a group that they just started, and they're in a nation called Astaspire. And all I had that was sitting there that was ready for them was basically, okay, this is what it looks like, and this is the general government structure, and these are the races that call it home. And then in my very first session, I introduced and came up with on the spot several in-depth religions and the local guard system and how basically the whole place was kind of running and working and how the people thought about it and the wharf and the city they were in, and just kind of, it's something that my brain just kind of works in stories and works very quickly.
Okay. And you like taking notes so this is consistent as you're going?
Yep. Yeah, so I almost always have my voice being transcribed when I'm talking somewhere, so I can basically be like, okay, I'm not going to use this for anything else except for what did I say and what was the lore and what's actually a part of this, so I can then take it and build out my nations into what they are rather than it changing.
Yeah. I actually think that's a fairly common thing that, well, not fairly common. Not unusual might be a better description for what DMs do to try and keep track of what they're doing. Just record it. And if you have an auto-transcription thing, even better. You can kind of just search the word that you said and then grab it easier. That's nice.
Yeah, it's wonderful.
I'm curious, that tool, did you get that through the life coaching stuff? Because I imagine some therapists use that as a way of taking notes on their sessions.
Yeah, so some therapists will do that. I know that a lot of the people that I've worked with that always kind of record their sessions. It just, both for like legal reasons, just safety and things of that sort, but also because it can make, if they can't take notes during the session, like they have to do something in depth and it's going to be hard for them to take notes, they'll do that. For me, I tend to try and avoid using it when I'm doing one-on-one with somebody. But I actually originally found the note-taking app that I mainly use, which is Notion, by myself. I was just looking for what could dictate, but could also be a huge note, like a thing for me that I could have just hundreds of thousands of notes sitting in for whatever I wanted them to be, and started using Notion. And there's also several free dictation software on. In fact, I think I have one sitting here. Let's see if I can grab it out. But I have one that I tend to use basically for everything, where I'm like, oh, I'll just pull open my stuff and just start going, and it works out.
Yeah, Notion's cool. I heard someone talk about Notion at my work this week, actually, where they were talking about using it for recording meetings.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff. I use this. There's one on the internet that I like that's called Speech Notes. It's just speechnotes.co/dictate. And it works really well. It gets a little confused if there are multiple voices talking into it at the same time. Yeah. But if I'm just the only one talking, it picks up every word. It's great.
Cool. Yeah, I found that for multiple voices, you need something that's more purpose-built within a voice chat system where it's better able to grab that.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so it's more wide, and then you do improv to focus on the parts, and you just have 12 years of experience doing that. I guess more, since you said you were doing that kind of storytelling before you were playing D&D. So
yeah, and it's something of it is very wide, and so there's some areas that I kind of, one of the things that I tend to do is when I first for instance, with Liara, when I first made the world, I was basically like, okay, I'm going to pretty detail out one continent, and the others I'm going to leave as, here's the basics I know about them, and their lore will come in as we go, and it'll allow me to then, as I get more groups or more people, or one group finishes the campaign and wants to start another, I can then transition to that place as I start building it over time. And pieces of it start kind of coming together, so it becomes kind of just a living, breathing place that can build, but also will never get me bored in the same place.
Gotcha. That's great.
Yeah.
So let's dive in. What is Liara like physically? Is it a globe? Is it a pancake? Is it a column? What are we looking at?
Yeah, Liara is a globe. It's made up of basically 7 continents, and is a place where I guess I kind of put it in my elevator pitch, but to give my elevator pitch again, it basically is a place where history is kind of a little messed up. Things don't seem to be correct from the history of the world, and nobody knows exactly what was history and what's right or wrong from what happened, what the true stuff that happened is, and so it allows for it to kind of slowly build and people to always have mysteries to explore.
Okay, so it's like someone will read in a history book that like country A won this war, and then they go there and country A was destroyed like 500 years before that war even happened, or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. For instance, I had one of my characters, one of my players, he wanted to make a character that was very specific from like this era of history, and all these things, and I was like, sweet, because they'd heard some things and gotten some tidbits about that history from what they'd been playing. He was trying to set up his next character. And then when I had him setting up his next character, I started giving him a lore that he hadn't had, or that he was like, this isn't what you said and we've seen in this story. And I was like, well, yeah, because it's been like 5,000 years since then, so history for sure isn't exactly the same. And so I can kind of give these pieces that are, oh, so here's the real history, here's what everyone thinks history.
Yeah, there's a famous example of this from the first historian, Thucydides, for history, where there was some assassination of someone, and I'm not remembering the exact bits of it. And pretty much everyone thought it was done by like this one person. And Thucydides went around like investigating it, talking to people, getting their stories, and like archaeology too. He like went to grave sites and looked at them, and found out that's not possible that he was assassinated by that person, because I forget the exact story, but it was a really cool piece of like seeing like the first historian look into something like that and realizing, hey, that's not right. Just by, like rumors get started and people just go with it. It's really like the person that the story said they had assassinated that person. It's just nobody liked them, so they pinned it on him, basically.
Yeah, and there's so much of like our even just history of Earth that history is just written by the victor. Like whoever won this war gets to basically tell whatever side of the story they want to tell. Mm-hmm. And some of it's accurate, maybe most of it's accurate, but there are pieces that are still going to be like, oh well, I mean, it's not exactly true. Yeah,
I think we're seeing some revision on that for like the American wars with the Indians, for example. Like 100 years ago, that would have been a very much like, well, they were uncivilized and savage, and it was righteous to get rid of them and take their land. And I don't think that is the general storyline anymore.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so 7 continents. Do we want to get into each of them, or does that feel like a little sort of superfluous?
I can give a brief, like a 5 seconds on what each of them is known for.
Okay.
Yeah.
5 seconds. I got my hand up.
Oh, okay. Well, 5 seconds.
I'm kidding. Go for it.
You're good. The first one I started with was Ulor, which is basically kind of the melting pot of each of my ones, where most of the cultures have been there for so long that most of the people who live there are of all different races and all different groups, and have mainly conglomerated into nations rather than their original cultures. So there aren't like the orcs hate the elves or anything like that. It's just kind of like, everybody just kind of lives here, and in Nation A hates Nation B. So it's kind of just more of a melting pot. My second one is Brask, which is a very merchant style kind of continent that I think I have had a lot of inspirations for a lot of these, but I think I was originally very interested in kind of the colorful desert kind of civilizations. I always thought was really cool, just like all these colorful banners and things that were really cool. So that was my second one, was Brask, of kind of this merchant nation. Then I came up with Westskyle, which is basically called the monster continent, where most of the more monstrous races call home. So things that the rest of the world, at least in certain places, doesn't want to know exist and doesn't want to deal with, but is also home to some of the older magics of the world. Then I've got Obrian, which Obrian is basically the Feywild of my world. I have planes, but I didn't want to go with kind of the basic, there's a Feywild and there's a Shadowfell and all these things. I wanted it to be very specific, and so Obrian is basically where a lot of kind of chaotic magic has kind of collided to create very weird environments.
Yeah, that was one when you said the name. That's got to be the Fey one.
Oh yeah, Obrian, yeah. And then I've got Ravast, which used to be the most prosperous continent, but has since basically been destroyed. Most of it is now in ruins, and there's a lot of scavengers that kind of try and go over parts of it, and a piece of it has kind of been taken over by an empire that no one is really happy. And then my sixth is Dothlorian, which is a very basically technologically advanced continent. They were basically lost to history until one of my parties actually brought them back. This continent, now they're kind of more technologically advanced than the others. And my final one, Vintra. Vintra was long ago, basically, when magic was introduced to the world. There were a bunch of people who didn't have magic, and so the people who did basically sequestered all of them to this one continent. And Vintra has kind of become this place where not a lot of magic, but those who do have magic are pretty dangerous.
Okay, got to ask you about that. I'm actually writing it down to ask once you're done. Magic was introduced later on, so initially this world had no magic, and then it comes along later. Feels very different from the usual, like, fairy tale thing where, like, the world used to have a lot more magic, and that's why animals talked and giants were around, but now magic has faded away. So that's a very different take, where magic increases within the world. What made you want to do it that way, and sort of what's the story there as well?
Yeah. So one of the things I want to do is kind of going back to the history. I was really interested in kind of making a history where the world didn't actually know the real history at all. The real history of everything just wasn't correct. So most people knew that at one point the gods granted magic, and that's when Vintra, all the people were kind of sequestered off to Vintra who didn't have magic. But that's believed to be the beginning of history to most people, where there's another 5,000 to 10,000 years before that has been forgotten. One of my parties, one of the main parts of their campaign was they discovered that there was actually the upper crust of the world was basically a shell, and underneath was an older part of the world that was at one point technologically advanced and had basically just fallen to ruin, and there were just basically scavengers living in the ruins. Kind of almost like kind of how you mentioned kind of the Indians, of kind of just to the modern people, a more barbaric people that were calling this place home, tribal. But I was really interested in kind of having this, what if magic came on later? Because I've always really loved sci-fi and fantasy, and I thought, wouldn't it be interesting if basically fantasy grew up in the, basically its cradle was the deathbed of sci-fi.
Okay, yeah, no, I can see that.
Yeah. And so that was kind of the original thought process, and then over time it's kind of become something of, now people are starting to see that history isn't correct, and trying to see where the two sides of history, the people who have lived underneath and the people who have lived on top, kind of those two histories kind of starting to come together to piece together things.
That's a very interesting puzzle, and when I first got your survey, I was curious, like, okay, how does the therapy work into this world? Like, are we exploring people's traumas or stuff like that? And it feels like No, we're just giving them sort of an interesting like puzzle story to figure out.
Yeah.
And it's not really an exploration of themselves more than any regular RPG session is.
It's meant to be fun and something that brings people together, because connection is just something that people need. Even introverts, you need to have people that you're around. So it gives people some fun and something to be around each week, but also some motivation to work towards the things that are important to.
Yeah, for sure. I'm actually helping out a D&D charity that's the main concept as well, is trying to give people social connections that are fun and powerful.
Yeah, and it's so important, and there's so many just even mental health benefits to doing like just tabletop role-playing games, because you're with people and you're having to be creative, you have to problem solve, you have to learn how to actually interact with somebody if you don't agree with them, even if it's just the DM portraying an NPC, that you have to be like, okay, I don't agree with you, so how do I talk with you? And it just has so many mental health benefits that are amazing, even if you don't add in it's directly tied to or directly leading you towards there.
Yeah. So you mentioned in your survey that there's 10 different pantheons within Liara, and I was a little confused by the terminology that you used to describe them, because it almost seemed like they were in like this tiered list from how you put them, where like there's a big pantheon that's like 5 gods or something that created the universe, and then a pantheon of 12 gods, and then there's like sort of it increases in power the higher you go up, kind of, and that they all exist and are kind of part of the same group, but have different domains of influence that they have. Is that about right?
Yeah, that's pretty close. Basically, I was interested in kind of the religious side of it, of having like there is like a supreme being. There's a god, but he's basically created these pantheons that are the kind of closer intermediaries that you can work with. And the top one is the Arpeon gods, which are basically a pantheon of 19 gods. And then there are a total of basically 10 rings is what they're called. The Arpeon gods is one of the rings, and then each of the rings goes down, and they get more and more fallible or morally not good, basically, as you go down. Because at first I was like, oh man, like it'd be really cool, because oftentimes when people make like gods, most people don't like their gods to be really good or really bad. They kind of like some morally gray. And so I was like, well, I think it'd be interesting to make the Arpeon gods basically that just they're really good. They're really out there to help the people, but give that a caveat of, but they really don't get involved with people. They don't try and influence people to do, or like they don't involve directly. But then I also really liked like God of War. The thought process from like the God of War games of like, well, there are these gods who just like, I mean, I don't like you, Ares, I'm going to kill you. Like, and gods can kill each other, and there are mortals who ascend to their positions. And so that's kind of where the lower rings are kind of fit into that realm of mortals can ascend to the pantheons, and plenty of those gods kill each other all the time.
Yeah, so I was thinking of the Greek pantheon as somewhat similar to this, where the top has like these sort of entities, like night is one of the like ancient entities within the Greek pantheon. The earth, the sky, chaos, eros, which is not really love, but is more like sex within the Greek pantheon. Those are all near the top.
Yes.
And then you have the Titans, and then you have the Olympians, and then you have the Olympian children. And sort of below that, like you're saying, in more the mortal realm, like Hercules is kind of mortal, kind of a god. And then all of the other like hero people like Jason and Theseus and Odysseus and Achilles, those are all kind of mythical figures that people don't quite pray to, but they idolize and try to emulate.
Yeah.
Or did, I suppose. I'm not sure that's really something that people do anymore. But
yeah.
So I can see that even that. I don't conceive of it as having like this tiered system, but it definitely does.
Yeah. Yeah, there's the big fish and the small fish kind of a thing. You don't see like, yeah, there's the cool stories of like Hercules like duking it out with some of the gods, but when you think about it just from a base perspective, just power level, they're pretty different in like what one can do compared to the other.
Yeah. I was also thinking of the Lord of the Rings as another example where there's sort of the god Eru, I forget what its name is, and then the 12 gods that are part of the pantheon, and then there's kind of angels, like Gandalf is one of those, and Sauron is another one, and then super powerful elves are below that, and then kind of everyone else.
Yes. Yeah, it's very similar. So, and you mentioned basically my pantheons are set up into kind of different domains, I guess, or like realms of, here's kind of what they're over. So I have like the Ring of Elements, the Ring of Time, Souls, War, Dreams, Thought, that give them kind of a, here's what their basic tenets are, or things they're over, and then they have other things of, okay, how do I tie them to the world? Kind of like how you mentioned the Greek pantheon. I always thought it was cool that, like, I mean, I think Hera for some reason is the one that is coming to mind of like she's over marriage, and these different things that are these things, but then Zeus is over light. So you kind of got these things of, oh, there are different people over different things, but some of them have both moral domains like that marriage, and things like, oh, you are also over fire.
Yeah, they are sort of. There's a lot of things that get combined in the Greek pantheon. So Hera is the god of marriage, also of cows.
Yeah.
And Zeus is the god of lightning, but also in the moral perspective is the god of oaths.
Yeah.
But not marriage oaths, because that's Hera's thing.
Yeah.
He's more importantly the god of like hospitality. So like you shouldn't attack a guest in your home because you've welcomed them in your home. You have to respect that.
Yeah.
And fire is Hephaestus and Ares. They're both kind of fire. Like Hephaestus is a creative fire and Ares is a destructive fire.
Yes.
And then they also have, like, Hephaestus has a lot of creative things, and Ares is also the god of war and violence.
Yeah.
So it sounds like yours is more separated than that, where a lot of them are more sort of singular in what they're doing because you have so many more gods.
Yes, because I have so many more gods, they're very kind of just very specific in what they do. But it's also kind of like the Archeon gods, which are my highest ring, the Ring of Elements. They basically have very generalized domains. So one of them might have fire, where when you go down to one of the lower rings, like Dreams, one of them is going to have like sparks. So still related to fire, but they're not over all of it.
Okay. So the rings you have sound interesting. Like Elements I kind of get. And Souls also kind of makes sense to me. There's a lot of different things to go with Souls, but Dreams, I wouldn't normally think there's enough there to support like a pantheon of different deities within that concept.
Yeah.
So I'm curious about like what the different rings are and how you've differentiated them.
Yeah.
So I'd like to kind of go through in order. So Archeon's at the top with the 19.
Yes.
Well, we'll get to that story later.
Yes. Yeah. You're good.
So 19 at the top. And I don't usually think of there being 19 elements. Unless pulling from the periodic table, I suppose. So,
yeah. Right.
So what's the deal there?
Yeah. So when I was originally coming up with the Archeon gods, I wanted them to, and I misspoke. I have a Ring of Elements that's below the Archeon gods. The Archeon gods are the Ring of Creation.
Oh, okay.
So these 19 gods are kind of over both moral and physical, basically, domains that have to do with kind of the creation of world and thought and things of that sort. So there's one that's over truth elements, but also fire, water, and the depths of the earth, that allow them to have a bunch of different things, and they're also each of the Archeon gods has a very specific, basically, principle that they're, or major tenet they're over. So, for instance, the very first one, basically, kind of, I guess you could consider basically Zeus of this pantheon, kind of the head of this pantheon. Hers is honesty, is basically her major tenet. But each of them kind of just slowly goes down through, or basically has all these different elements and things that they're related to.
Okay. So we have creation, and we have elements. And elements is more like fire, water, that kind of thing.
Yep, very specifically fire, water. Then there is time, which is basically, it's everything from, like time itself, but also like history, how it's recorded, and how individuals perceive time. And then you go into past, present, future, all these different things of kind of how you could see time or how it would be important to people.
Okay. So sort of possibility versus anxiety might be one paradigm you could have there?
Yes.
Dichotomy. Yeah.
Yes. And then there's the Ring of Destiny that comes next, which is also kind of there's the thought of, there could be fate, but there's also the thought of you have to make your own destiny. Like, you have to walk life and see what happens. It's not like maybe somebody's make it all happen for you, but if you don't do anything, you're just going to sit there your whole life.
I got a question here for the so we have this sort of top down for how stuff is organized within the hierarchy of the gods, and I'm also now thinking that this must have been how stuff was initially created, right? So initially you have the 19 at the top that have the aspects of creation. We need something to get started with. It should be creation that gets things started. And then elements like physical building blocks, and then time, so that we can have not just a single thing that's immutable and forever, but have past, present, future.
Yes.
And now we're getting into fate. So suggesting that before there's, really concrete things, because we still just have like raw elements for what exists within the universe. Yes. We have a plan and a divine destiny for what's going to happen.
Yes, which is where the next pantheon comes in, souls, the Ring of Souls. Okay. Which then goes into, at that point, it's technically okay for there to be people, or things that can live and die and all of these different things.
I was almost curious if like animals was going to come before that, actually, or plants or something like that.
Yeah, it basically went like a good way. I also have this kind of steps out of the pantheons for a second, but the world is also set up history-wise into what's known of history into epoch of basically like times of creation. So there was the first epoch where it was basically like, everything's just being built. It's that kind of time of creation, and then it slowly went through, I guess you could kind of call it the Christian way of like, things kind of progress in this way, but it's not exactly that road.
I mean, every different mythology has a creation myth that sort of has a progression for how things are organized and put into place.
Yes.
So, the sort of weak structure in Genesis, sure, go with that.
Yeah. You go after souls, you go to the Ring of Knowledge, and then to the Ring of War, and then to the Ring of Dreams, which you mentioned dreams. One thing I've always thought about is interesting about dreams is, there's when you're asleep and you're dreaming, which is kind of that weird, almost chaotic of just imagination and thoughts and stuff. But there's also people have dreams of like, I want to achieve this in my life. And so that's also contained within there. And then there's finally the Ring of Thought that makes up the piece. Okay.
I would have thought within that hierarchy that dreams would have been before war.
Yes.
Where war is because you want something, like a conflict, and you only want something if you've sort of dreamt about it. Does that make sense?
No, yeah. And it's kind of one of the things that I thought was interesting as I was kind of making these pantheons is, it's kind of one of those things of well, if you don't have a god who's over that domain and wars begin to happen, you need to make that pantheon that's over war. And, wars start happening because someone wants this or somebody wants this. Well, we probably need dreams. And they slowly start getting made, which inevitably, because these gods aren't just made out of nowhere kind of perfect, they're brought up and ascended from mortals. And so these later pantheons are mortals who fit, like the Ring of War is made up of mortals who fit that kind of realm.
I see. Yeah. Yeah, you were talking about that before. So it's sort of uplifting for, like George Washington. Oh, you were a great general. Let's make you the god of war, or
yes.
Sort of perseverance through adversity. Maybe would be what you would have him be.
Yeah.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah.
So running through it again, see if I can remember it. We have creation, elements, time, fate, souls, knowledge, war, dreams.
Right. One left.
I thought you said there was 10. There was only 8.
Oh, there might just be 8. I may have put 10 on there and just been.
No. Okay. Well, I know I'm missing one more here. What was after dreams?
There's one left.
I lost it. Okay. What was it?
You're good. It's thought.
Thank you. Thought. Okay.
Yes, you're good.
All right.
Yeah.
And I feel like thought is last because I can imagine like animals have wars and dreams without having what we would really call like complex thoughts.
Yes.
Well, cool. All right, I gotta write down 9 pantheons here so I don't get confused later on.
You're good.
Okay, so I've said I'd get back to this, but like the 19 for the top, or is it 12?
Yes.
And we said 19 before to not complicate it, but let's get into the complication. So this is where we start telling stories instead of just describing stuff. So go for it. Why is it 19?
Yeah. So now that I'm thinking about it, this is where the 10th pantheon comes in. Basically, in history, there's believed to at one point there were originally 19 members of the European pantheon, and then something happened that corrupted 7 of them, where they basically became the 10th pantheon called the Maleficar. And this pantheon of demons was made up of corrupted members of the European gods, and then one of my recent campaigns ended up basically uncorrupting the 7 and bringing them back into the regular pantheon. But forever they were basically, for most of history, people basically forgot that they were RPN gods at any point, and they were just demons.
Okay, so these are sort of negative parts of creation, or are they positive? Are they more like destruction?
So yeah, they were originally. I originally was like, I could do like the 7 deadly sins, but then I was like, it's a little cliche, and so it kind of turned into like a little bit of the 7 deadly sins, but also of what are the things that really are like kind of just break people as you go through life and things. So there can be addiction, but also things that are what kind of tempt people are kind of what they became. So yes, the 7 deadly sins, but they also have other things. So for instance, I have one that's over basically like her domains are basically forbidden desires, obsession, things of that sort. So it's a take on lust that's a little bit different of, I'm like, for those forbidden feelings, that obsession with somebody, a little bit of fear and unease that can lead you towards that. Things like that.
Yeah, a bit broader. Yeah.
Yes, a little bit broader. And they were basically the Arpion, because they are corrupted, the Maleficar, because they're corrupted Arpion gods are basically on a similar power tier to the Arpion. And they ended up being some of the people who kind of almost made some of the lower pantheons more fallible over time because of their.
Oh, I mean, that's, like you said, people like having sort of human entities to tell their stories about and have in their mythology. So
yeah, and it's also one of those things that I think is interesting is we as people often have something, we want something to blame. So if you, so it's interesting to give kind of a whole pantheon that's basically you're just there to blame.
I mean, yeah, that's a lot of what psychology studies for how religion affects people, is that people that are religious often feel more at peace with the world because it's kind of out of their hands. Instead of blaming themselves, they can say, well, it's God's plan for if something doesn't work correctly.
Yeah.
And that's it's kind of funny that it would be like, well, it's out of my hands. It's the devil's fault.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true, but there's so much that you can see from history, even just not like religion. It's even stuff like you can even see like moments where like there was some despot or something like that where really they weren't that bad, or there was some king or something, they weren't that horrible, but everybody blames their circumstances on somebody. If you can just blame it on your neighbor across the street for whatever happened, it becomes easier.
I was curious about the way you've designed this, if you've taken any inspiration from the Sandman series.
I have heard of the Sandman series, but I know basically nothing about it.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, check it out. Get it from your library. It's great.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll check it out.
Yeah. I'm thinking about it because it focuses on 7 different entities that are like sort of beyond God, sort of.
Yes.
Where they're fundamental aspects of reality, and the main character is Dream, the Sandman. And he's got 6 siblings: Death, Destiny, Despair, Desire, Delirium, and Destruction.
Yes.
And sort of their weird, screwed up family.
Yeah.
But just great storytelling. And it's an interesting take on what sort of higher divine beings would care about. Like it's...
Yeah.
You know, we usually think of like sort of God within the Christian dynamic or Judaism, where like, you know, the Jews are his chosen people, and there's a lot of like individual interactions with people, and, you know, Abraham, the other prophets, Samuel, Saul, so on. But these ones have a very different view on what humanity is and what matters to them.
Yes.
Just very cool characterization of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Another inspiration point that I got my little book out that you might have seen.
Yeah.
This is the Deities and Demigods book from 3.5, or I guess 3rd edition. I think this came out before it was 0.5.
Yes.
Which also has a section in it for different, I think it's called spheres of influence, which is what I was trying to say before I said domains of influence.
Yes.
It was trying to use a separate word because of domain having this mechanical context within D&D for clerics. So
yes.
You know, it's got a list of different things, so it's not just like domains where like, you know, water is a domain. It's like sea, wetlands, weather, winter, all things that are kind of associated with water, but are more specific, like rivers, and river hazards is a separate one.
Yeah.
And this is just supposed to like give you ideas for things that define deities beyond just those like mechanical domains. So you can think of them in a broader context of where they fit into society. And obviously you've already got a lot going on for what you have here. I was just thinking this is a great way to separate these things within a pantheon that you're building for yourself. And I feel like even without this little aid here for doing it that I have on my bookshelf, you have basically done that already.
Yeah, it was one of those things when I was making them. I was thinking, oh, like for instance, like the Ring of Thought. I was like, oh yeah, they could just be thought based. Like, oh, like when somebody's thinking this way or somebody's thinking this way, there's a god for that. But I was like, but it could be cool if they were just basically more specific pieces of what the original RPM gods are. So some of their thought things are there, but one of these members of the Ring of Thought could have some realm over some part of water, like you were saying. So that kind of have that thing, and there can be people who still are like, oh, like I have an interest in this more obscure god than the Arpeon because, oh, they're very specific to me.
Okay. For the thought gods, I was curious if like emotion comes into that in any way.
Yes, emotion does kind of come into it. Mainly, they're kind of built off of. Each of them has things like logic, structure, discipline, rigidity, but also there will be things like grief that'll be in things that are more emotional kind of pieces that sit in there, like grief, compassion, just things like that, but also can include things like art as part of thought.
Yeah, definitely. So you have a single pantheon that has this sort of hierarchical structure for the world. So presumably everyone is aware of these things because magic, and that's the way D&D works usually. Or
yes.
Daggerheart, whatever.
Yes.
How do people interact with and worship the gods? Is it like a single religion? Is there a bunch of different ones? Is it more like D&D has this concept that there's a pantheon, but everyone sort of just picks their favorite and doesn't care about the rest of them?
Yes.
So how's that structured?
Well, I actually like both sides of that coin, kind of what you said of like, oh, like I just pick which one I want, and they're structured religions because both give kind of a flavor to things. And so certain parts of the world, like the continent U lore, is kind of the just pick which one you want, but is mainly just the Arpeon god. The other gods really don't kind of play any role there and don't show up. But in other places, there are plenty of religions that have kind of taken hold, and some of them completely just disregard the Arpeon god, even though you can't deny that they exist, because the Arpeon gods are very tangible things that people can find and see their influence. But people kind of just disregard them or have kind of made their own narrative. For instance, I had one that is still the Arpeon gods, but they believe the 7 who were just recently uncorrupted are heretics and usurpers. And they don't deserve to be a part of it, and anyone who believes in them should not be killed, but should be shunned until they believe in true 12.
Okay. It's good. Conflict. Like it.
Yeah.
So you still kind of have religious wars, but maybe not on the scale that we have in the real world.
Yes. Not to that scale, but there's still conflicts, and there have been wars, but a lot of that is kind of stopped by the absolute like unshakable fact that like the Arpeon gods exist, and they do think this. So you can have your religion in this space, but everybody kind of knows like they do exist. You can't just say they don't.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of religious wars within our history are much more wars of resources or culture than specifically religion. It feels like the religious aspect usually gets brought in more as a justification for genocide, for when we think of it as negatively, where a lot of other cases, the war probably still would have happened regardless of religion. Yeah,
the war still would have happened. It's usually over, hey, I want your stuff. That looks nice.
I mean, so many of the Crusades, like explicitly religious wars, involved alliances with other Muslims to attack their Muslim enemies. So it's just like they were just after territory. It wasn't anything else.
Oh yeah, it's so true.
Okay, I think we got into the part about races, and in your survey you said 31 races, which sounds like a lot until you consider all the sort of extra ones that D&D has tacked on over the years. Like it's, the player's handbook has like 6 or 7, but when you look at all these other sources, really D&D has like 100 races or something. So 31 seems big at first for like, whoa, that's a lot, but I don't think it actually is.
Yeah.
So 31 is probably too much to detail. But the basic question here is more about, are they kind of fitting the normal fantasy archetypes, like elves are in the forest, dwarves are in the mountains, that kind of thing?
No, I actually wanted. I always like things. Like some of the stories I really enjoy is when someone takes an archetype and they flip it on its head.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of change it up. So I like to have things that are very different. So, for instance, in D&D, tieflings are generally seen as, like, most people are like, oh, that's a little freaky.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're a bad source of something. Whereas in my version of tieflings are very much more of a honorable people, that are very much very family oriented, and very much care about their families and the people around them, and are very much willing to basically aid others where they can. So I've kind of flipped a lot of them on their head, and there's several that I've come up with that are my own that I've kind of added, or that I thought would be an interesting add. I was trying to think of, like, oh, what could be kind of a cool underwater race that I could add? Because usually there's some sort of an underwater race for things, but I didn't want it to just be, oh, they're mermaids or something like that. So I was like, well, what if they were basically made from heat, from like underwater like vents. And so they're people who have like a turquoise green skin. Their eyes are made from sea glass, and they vent steam from their joints, from basically their cores that are made of this kind of just strong, intense steam.
What color did you say they were?
Like a greenish turquoise kind of color. I am colorblind, so I'm unreliable for colors.
Okay. All right. I was thinking, like, for steam vents in the ocean, a lot of the initial organisms that got their energy from that were getting their energy from sulfur bonds that were produced, being shot up by the steam. So I was thinking, like, a cool color for that would be sulfur, which is yellow.
Yeah.
But also, like, water is greenish blue. So
Yeah. Yeah, it was just kind of, I was like, oh, this color's cool, I'll do that, which always comes in when somebody's doing something great.
Yeah.
I want it to be like accurate, but it's also like, but what's gonna look cool? You can see that in things even like Lord of the Rings. Like, there's some of their armor that you're like, man, that does not look practical, but dang, does it look cool?
Yeah. Warcraft, especially, for that. None of the armor there is practical.
Oh yeah.
Okay, so your survey focused on the sort of evil race, the Zephyrin. Am I saying that right?
Yeah. So the Zephyrin basically are the equivalent of fairies, to an extent. But rather than they're just little guys, they stand at the height of humans, just a little bit shorter in general, and more insect-like, and they can be a lot of different insects. So it could be a beetle, a dragonfly, a butterfly, all these different things. But their biggest thing over kind of the centuries, and especially in recent years, is that they have the highest, basically, population growth. They can just populate really quickly, like rabbits do. And they also they find the most amount of nutrients from eating other humanoids. So they basically just become a really terrifying source in the world because there's so many of them, but they're a very warlike people, so know how to fight, but they also move into new territory because they're going to be humanoids that they can eat.
Yeah, I was thinking your description of them in the survey seems much more violent than usual depictions of fairies. Like,
oh yes,
fairies often have this dichotomy of being like, oh, there's good fairies and there's bad fairies, and the bad fairies will, hurt you and trick you, but not usually just like brutally murder you. It was more like there's trickery going on, and your version seemed more just like they just pull off the knives and go to town. There isn't any tricks going on. It's just pure force.
Yes, and that was something that I thought was interesting, again, kind of like flipping things on its head. But I also, there are, good fairies in certain parts of the world. There are, cultures that have set themselves apart, but that main culture has basically named themselves the Dominion and have kind of taken a couple other races under their wing to help them in their cause.
Another thing you mentioned in the survey is that they have like all this extra population growth that
Yes.
kind of makes sense for an apex predator that hasn't reached its max population yet, I suppose.
Yes.
As you've portrayed them. It's still different than the way fairies are usually portrayed, where I feel like in some of the literature I've read, fairies are basically don't reproduce, but also can't really die. That whenever one dies, it just gets reborn inside of a flower or something, and it comes out. So that there's sort of a finite set number of fairies.
Yes.
Rarely is there a description of fairies where they're increasing in population. Which I think goes back to what I said about magic before. Usually magic is like going out of the world, and therefore any magical creature is also going out of the world.
Yes.
So this goes back to like magic is sort of increasing within your realm, so fairy population also increasing. Maybe not connected, but...
Yeah. No, yeah, it's something that I just thought, like, I don't know, there are certain races that I've always thought, like, oh, that's interesting. Like, I think they're cool. Like, I think one of them is like dwarves. You just always think like, oh, they're in their mines, and they're mining for gold. They're living in their holes. They don't come out, and that kind of thing. And they're kind of just a stubborn people. But I was like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to kind of just tweak it, shift it, make them something different, especially if the whole history of how everything has happened is very different from what somebody else has written or come up with.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any other special races that you wanted to bring up here besides the Zephyrin?
I mean, there are plenty of them. They all have their own cultures and everything like that, but they're kind of if I had to pick like a threat right now.
Right.
Mention those.
Okay. Well, let's go in the opposite direction then. What would you say is like the race that is the defender of truth and justice?
Yeah. Okay. If I was doing that, I would choose the Cavothan, which are basically a good way to describe it is like I watch some anime and I've always been interested in basically like Oni.
Okay.
So like short horns, not quite tieflings, and not really they look basically human just with short horns. I always thought that was a really interesting thought, but the Oni in my world are similar to the tieflings. They share ancestry, where they are very similar and close peoples, but the Oni are believe that throughout their lives they have to study one skill, and usually for most of them it's warfare, and so they are very skilled in a specific weapon each Oni. So you never want to run across one, because even the fairies that are trained since they're born to like go fight things, usually 10 to 20 fairies die to a single Oni in combat. And the Oni are the only ones who have ever pushed the fairies out of their territory, rather than having to run from them.
I'm curious what makes them so good at fighting fairies, because the way you describe them, they're sort of the same physical size, except fairies can fly.
Yes, they're the same physical size, but they also have a unique, basically, muscle structure that gives them a much higher strength and endurance than others. Specifically, one of their mechanics that you get if you were to pick one is that they start with the ability to wield two-handed weapons with one hand, with the same, basically, skill.
Okay. Cool. You can do one in each hand. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just kind of having cool things like that, but also the Oni are known for their willingness to collaborate with other races and some technological advancements that are really good against fairies.
So in Oni stories, often the reason they're sort of human with horns is they're actually shape-shifting from, like, there's more demon form into a human form, but they can never quite hide the demon form when they change into human. Is that something you brought in as well, or no?
Not exactly. The main thing that I thought was interesting was the physique itself, but I also I saw so many images and stuff when I was trying to like come up with the Oni, basically the Cavothan for my world, that had tattoos, and I was like, what would be an interesting thing to do for tattoos where all Cavothan have a single monocolor of tattoos that they wear, that are basically stories of their ancestors' glories that each of them is wearing, that kind of helps them to kind of keep their, so where other people tell stories to keep their history or write stories, theirs are tattooed.
I'm laughing a little bit because this seems a lot like the Goliath race from how you described it.
Oh, maybe. I don't know the Goliath at all.
Oh, okay. This was in 4th edition, and you started playing around when
I started playing in 5th.
Yeah. They were one of the more common races in 4th edition, where they were super large, strong, and also covered in tattoos.
Yeah. Hey. Yeah, that happens. I've had a lot of people who will be like, oh, were you inspired by this? And I'm like, honestly, I've never heard of that. I've had so many people who will be like, stories, like, you heard the story? I'm like, I may have heard the name. Other than that, I don't know anything.
Yeah. I've already experienced that myself a few times in this conversation.
That's all right.
But honestly, like, large person covered in tattoos, like, you could have a biker as an inspiration for that. Like, that's a fairly common stereotype even within American culture. So it's not like we have to draw from some fantasy source for it.
Yes.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So Cavotan is the race. Okay, cool. How do you spell that?
It's Ka apostrophe Vothan.
So I'm not doing the glottal stop well enough, I suppose.
You're good.
Cavotan.
Yes.
All right.
Yeah,
trying to. Oh man, my dad is a linguist, and he taught me like what that apostrophe actually means in a lot of these cases, and it's stuck with me.
Oh, you're good. Not a problem.
All right. So the history for your world is what I wanted to get into next, and I guess you've got a big set of stuff here, and I want to focus on what you want to share and what you feel is most relevant. So thinking of it from that perspective, where would you want to start?
If I'm thinking of it from most relevant, probably the creation of the Dominion by the fairies, and starting that, and kind of a little bit of how, like, what people know of history and things, but mainly.
All right, yeah. Tell me about the Dominion. How'd they get their start?
Yeah. Basically, the fairies, for a long time, weren't kind of they were ward-like, but not to the extent they were, until their dear friends, basically a bird-like race called the Skyren, gained a patron deity. One of the Arpian gods took a special interest and started kind of taking care of them, and the fairies got a little jealous, the Zephyrin. And the Zephyrin then basically decided that to best kind of deal with this situation, they started having kind of debates between them, and some of them took sides, and finally the Zephyrin decided to launch an attack on the home of the Skyren, specifically after an artifact that they owned that was basically an unlimited power source that they believed they could use to murder a god. They then they were able to sneak in far enough to use this weapon, and they did manage to murder one of the Arpian gods, which corrupted them rather than fully kill them, which is the start of the 7 gods that were corrupted from the Arpian pantheon. And basically from there, the Dominion was basically born at that point, where the Skyren and the Zephyrin, who had been friends for a long time, became enemies, and wars basically began, and the Dominion started taking in other races that, or at least pieces of them, that kind of fit their agenda. Specifically the Thremere, which are a version of like furbolgs, and the Urelkin, which are basically fawns, or satyrs. Kind of took the two groups under their wings, and these groups began kind of expanding, and actually ended up pushing specifically like the orcs of my world out of their original ancestral home where they had to run, and most of them were wiped out, and have been slowly rebuilding over centuries since. And there have been several other races that have kind of been forced from their homes and pushed away. And at this point in history, the Zephyrin and their dominion are beginning to finally make a push onto the major continents and away from their original space on West Skyle, where they've kind of decided they can't get anything more here and are starting to just have more trouble, so they're moving on to.
So their initial justification was just jealousy for going to war?
Jealousy, and that the Skyrim for a while had started getting more and more basically powerful and started kind of almost being a threat if they ever decided to mess with Zephyrin.
Okay, so it's a jealousy, but also a bit of a preemptive strike.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll preempt this before it becomes a problem.
And you said something about an artifact that can kill a god. Are we talking like a full Arpeon god, or what do we mean there?
Yes, so the item was originally built called the Twilight Beacon. And it originally powered the continent that I mentioned at one point, Dothlorian, that disappeared forever. The Twilight Beacon's use to kill one of the Arpeon gods, which corrupted that Arpeon god, also destroyed the continent that it was on. And so my party in one of my campaigns went back to the time before this happened and ended up stopping the fairies from that piece of their history, and ended up basically bringing that continent back. So the Twilight Beacon still exists. So there's still a basically god-killing weapon still sitting around in modern time.
Wow, that's I don't know. It feels like if I was an Arpeon god, I'd be very interested in getting rid of that weapon.
Yes, yeah, it's one of those things that it's become an issue for the Arpeon because the Twilight Beacon can be used to kill them, but also powers a continent-sized city that makes up Dothlorian.
Oh wow. Okay.
And just getting rid of it would kill millions of people.
Gotcha.
And so it kind of just has to sit.
So, is there anything else you wanted to say about the history? I know we gave really broad strokes here.
Yeah. I guess that the only other thing that I can think of is that... Oh, I guess the one part that I did forget is that the Maleficar pantheon was made up of those 7 corrupted Arpeon, and then just before they were uncorrupted, another individual ascended from death. There was an individual who had died that showed up and was just called the Usurper. And they began to basically take over the Pantheon, and now the Usurper is starting to work with and kind of influence the Dominion in their kind of conquest.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool stuff.
Yeah.
And you got 5 different groups going on.
Mm-hmm.
And they're interacting with the world, obviously. Is it on more of a small scale where they're sort of affected by events but can't influence them, or have they got up to a larger scale where they can sort of make their own waves?
Yeah. I always like to let them start out in a small space where they're kind of the beginning there, but I always want their campaign to get to a point where they're kind of playing in the major leagues, where whatever's happening could seriously impact the world. Things that sort, like the group that brought back one of the continents. I have another group that was responsible for uncorrupting the Arpeon gods. There was a group that was specifically, they started getting involved in, and is currently involved in trying to get rid of the Usurper. Things that are just kind of I kind of just let it build and kind of see where the party wants to go, but also give like minor plot points that they can follow if they'd like.
Okay. And you said that they have had some sort of like stages where they've influenced each other. Mm-hmm. Have you ever had any actual like crossover events, or not that far?
Not that far, mainly because it's really hard to do crossover events especially when I'm doing things in more of a therapy aspect, mm-hmm. because I'm suddenly introducing people to each other where they may have not wanted to be introduced to that person. Or no, like in real life, I can't just be introducing random people to random people. That's a little hard, but with the groups that I have done, because I will also do this for some family and different people who want to play in this world. I have had a couple crossovers where I've let them kind of mess with each other.
Yeah, that was where I was going to go next, but a little bit more on that. You mentioned that you haven't done crossovers, but you have had sort of things that they've done influence the other groups.
Yes.
Can you give like an example or two of that?
Yeah. One of the examples was I have a group who's they've been basically made a deal with an almost all-powerful hag. And initially the hag was going to be taking an exorbitant cost from them, basically almost rendering them mostly dead to help them. But they found out that the hag was actually taking care of children and had a soft spot for children who had been disenfortuned and orphans and things of that sort. So they made a pact with her that if they would use the money that they had gathered to help start orphanages and help kids basically around the world, that the hag would help them for free. And the hag said yes. And so they've been setting up orphanages, but also it's been funny, their campaign is basically turning into business simulator, where they've just started buying businesses and stuff all over the world. That now my other campaigns are beginning to see like pieces of their organization around specifically these orphanages and things that have started just popping up that have offered some of them aid in certain cases and things of that sort.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Have you told the other group the cool stuff they're doing for everybody else?
Yeah,
right,
and it's fun because the group that originally did that was a family group that originally was doing business simulator. It was a family group, and one of my other groups is another set of family, but these people know each other, so they'll start talking to each other and being like, "Hey, like we're seeing this thing. Did you do that? Like, is this your fault?"
Oh, that's cool. That's cool.
Yeah.
You mentioned the family crossovers.
Yes.
That you'd done for your own group. What I wanted to talk about for that was, like, what you've described so far is, like, cool and interesting, and I'm sure it's fun for you, but it also is, like, has this professional aspect.
Yes.
So I was curious what you're doing, if anything, outside of your professional life for RPGs.
Yeah, I have 2 groups that I do for family right now. I do one for my wife's parents and siblings, and I do one for other members of her family because we don't really live a lot near my family, but my sister is playing in that. I kind of just run those games for them, and it's kind of just a more relaxed kind of a thing, but also if I want to, I can kind of go a little bit more in depth with them because we'll usually go for longer than 2 hours each game.
And are those ones still in Liara, or are they in a different campaign setting?
They're still in Liara. Yeah.
Okay, cool. So you have 5 therapy groups and then 2 extra groups. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
So 7 total.
Whew. That's a lot of D&D. Or
yeah.
Daggerheart, whatever.
Yeah, either way. But yeah, it's fun. I enjoy it.
Yeah. That's crazy. That's I kind of don't wish I was playing that much, but it still sounds fun.
Yeah.
That's really nice.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask you about you mentioned this ecosystem in your survey, where it's like an additional incentive system, because you have the IP incentive system for the life coaching stuff, and this seems more like a system for incentivizing stuff within the gameplay instead of for their real life outside of RPGs. And I think you kind of touched on it before, but I wanted to give you more of a chance to expand on it. So, what is the ecosystem?
Yeah, so the ecosystem, I wanted to offer an instance to encourage people if they wanted to take the option, but they don't have to get permanent buffs for role-playing, specifically with their fellow players. Because both for my family who's playing, but also the people I do in groups, you can really grow bonds and friendships and have a lot more fun if you're kind of doing a little bit of the role-play with them. Getting your character to know their character and doing all those things. And so I came up with basically a set of things of as they're role playing with other characters, they can gain permanent mechanical buffs. So the first one is they gain a plus to their insight or their perception while they're within 30 feet of that player, of that character kind of thing, which just kind of gives an incentive to be like, it could be fun to roleplay, but it also helps people to break out of their shell, which is
good. Okay. So plenty of games have systems for encouraging roleplay, but they usually have they're tied to experience is usually what I found, not so much buffs, but more like if you roleplay your character correctly, then you get an experience point, which isn't the way you set it up, because usually your experience points are coming from actions outside of the game, essentially.
Yes.
And, I mean, having a different way of, like, buffs is cool. That works. And another difference, if I'm getting this correctly, is that other games typically have you receiving incentives for playing your character the way your character would act, which can sometimes mean conflict with the other people within the group. And your intention is to not have that part of it. It's more like you want to have a cohesive group that gets along.
To an extent, I'm still okay with them to have conflict, and they can also get it for portraying their character well. But specifically, if they're portraying their character well with an NPC that I'm portraying, that's awesome. I might give them some stuff. But I want them to really be working with their fellow players. I want them to grow as a group and be friends. That doesn't mean their characters have to be friends. Your character can still have conflict with somebody else. But I want the players to kind of have that chance to kind of break out of their shell and have some fun in that space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I think it's something that a lot of people have issues with within role-playing games, where separating what the character is doing and what the player is doing, but also still wanting to have a good time.
Yes.
Like, you come in with a character that's like, I'm a thief and I'm going to steal from the party.
Mm.
Maybe perfectly in fitting the character, but if the other players kind of don't want you to do that and don't want to explore that as a storyline where they catch you and then they have to redeem you from your thieving ways, like, that's sort of a way you could do that. But if their response is, if we catch you, we're just going to kill your character, I mean, that's not really a fun storyline. It's just sort of, and then you're done. You have to roll up someone new. So having a plan for that, where you know where the story is going to go for that conflict within the party, I think is important to have that be fun and work. And often my experience is that you can't come up with a plan like that for people that are new to RPGs, because they just don't view it that way.
Yeah, I found that one of the things, because a lot of the people that I specifically do like the life coaching TTRPG groups for are completely new to this. They have no idea what any of this is. But one of the things that I found has been helpful is, especially because I'm often working with, like, the person who signed up this child to do stuff with me is their parent.
Uh-huh.
And a lot of parents are like, I kind of want my child to, like, do good things in the game. Like, I want them to be a good person. I don't want them to just be a murder hobo.
Right.
And so one of the things I found is helpful is making my world realistic law-wise. So, like, hey, if you go stealing, like, people are gonna look for you. It's not like there's no consequences.
Uh-huh.
And add some things where people have to kind of start thinking about it, but also kind of being not too heavy-handed, where they get the point of, like, the law will look for you, and their fellow players will kind of be like, hey, like, oh gosh, you got to be careful with your stealing. Like, we're all going to get in trouble if you do this, and it helps them to kind of push some different directions. But it also has been helpful when I know what their character kind of wants to do, what they kind of want to go with. I can fairly easily come up with story beats that I can add in to help them push in a specific direction to kind of go somewhere fun. And it's also been good. I usually kind of just talk with the people I actually had to do this with one of my family games recently, where I was like, hey guys, just so you know, you made these awesome characters. I'm so excited about them, but I can't bring your party together as a group on my own. Like actually make you guys stay together. So if you've made characters that just want to leave the party, that's so great. I love you. You're awesome. Have fun with it. But if you just go off on your own adventure, just way off there, I'm going to have you make a new character because I can't deal with you being way split from the party this whole time.
Right, yeah. That's I feel like something that's becoming more common as part of that session 0 conversation where we're going to do Temple of Horrendous Doom or whatever, and you need to play a character that wants to go into the Temple of Horrendous Doom with the 4 other people that want to go into the Temple of Horrendous Doom. And if your character doesn't want to do that, then that's what we're doing today. So
yeah, you gotta think a little bit of what you're doing. And I found I never like to railroad somebody into playing a specific type of character because they want them to be able to play what they want. So what I'll tend to do is, even if they play someone who's like, oh, I'm probably not going to want to going the route that we're going, I'll try and add story beats that'll tie what's happening to their character, make it important to their character.
That's just good storytelling. Yeah. The way I've heard that described is that you usually want to have like a physical motivation for a character, but also an emotional motivation. Simple example in Star Wars, like Luke gets captured by that big snow monster thing.
Yes.
And his physical motivation is to like get his lightsaber, but his emotional motivation is he wants to get back to his friends.
Yes.
I mean, his physical motivation is I don't want to be eaten.
Yes. His physical motivation is there are bones everywhere. I don't want to be that.
Yeah. But his emotional motivation is like, I have a family, friends, a home that I can return to, and I want to get to that stage. So that's a more obvious one, but usually your characters can have other ones, and it's ones that you kind of have to work with the player to get them there for the emotional ones. Where, you bring in a sister or a brother that's been kidnapped by the bad guys or something, or, something like that.
Yeah.
Sometimes you work with the player, sometimes you spring it on them. Or sometimes they do it on their own and you don't need to do anything.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's good stuff there.
Yeah, awesome.
I think we've gone through everything that I wanted to cover. Is there anything else you want to talk about, Casey?
No, I think I'm good. I'm feeling great.
Okay. Well, I feel like we kind of just covered this, but I usually end with, do you have any DM advice that you'd like to give people?
Yeah. Let me think if I have any others or if I've just given them. I guess if I had to give any advice to someone who's just starting out to DM or has been DMing for a while and is finding it really hard, is one thing that I found it to be some good advice is to not outline too hard what you're going to do for a session or for something. To give you an example, for me, my very first time DMing, I was like, okay, I watched my friend do it. That was awesome. Now I've got to do it. And I went into so much detail. I made this awesome castle escape that they were going to do, and they were all thrown in jail. It was going to be so awesome. It was going to last 4 hours. It lasted 30 minutes. And I was like, oh, no. And so I just improvised the entire rest of the 4.5 hours we played. And it's just one of those things that I've learned is because you're dealing with other people who also have brains, they're going to go ways you weren't expecting, or they're going to want to go ways that you weren't expecting. And so having general plans is great, but going too in depth of what you want exactly to happen will often kind of get exhausting and you'll get disappointed. So it's been and it gets hard, you get railroaded. So I always find that it's best for me. I tend to only have like maybe a sentence that I'll have for something. I never have anything else. And I also have just some programs that I have sitting next to me that I can quickly make a battle map if somebody does that. I can make it in like 10 seconds and things like that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I've started doing that myself. I still like having stuff prepped, but it's very minimal prepped. It's just like I can kind of run the social stuff without prep. Like I know this character, I've thought about what they would say, and we're good to go. I don't need to write anything down. It's more like the combat, like more game aspect of role-playing games that I feel like I do a lot more prep for.
Yeah, that was, I think that was my biggest pitfall for a while as a DM, was I avoided combat as much as possible because I found it really hard to prep it and get that all ready. That was my biggest pitfall for a long time. And then I finally just was like, okay, I'm going to take like 6 hours and just figure out how can I do this as quick as possible. Like in the middle of a game, if my guys just piss off some random innkeeper and he's going to send his buddies to go kill you, like how am I just going to make that happen in the middle of a session? And I found that it's something that I can do fairly easily just with, like, especially if I'm using online versions of like battle maps. I can just really quick make a battle map online and really quick just make myself some statistics for how the enemy works and all these things and have it done in 10 seconds and be ready to go for my combat.
Yeah, that's cool. I've felt like 5e doesn't support that very well, so I'm curious if Daggerheart is better for that, for the quick improvisation.
Yeah, I can do it with both, but Daggerheart is just slightly easier because I think there's a little less you have to keep track of with each enemy.
Okay.
Just a little bit less you have to keep track of, but it also helps because Daggerheart, unlike D&D where it's like, okay, everybody goes one at a time through, Daggerheart is every time one of your players, and they can go in any order they want, they can even just go right in a row, one person goes 6 times, the DM gains a token they hold on to, and as soon as anybody misses an attack roll, it becomes the DM's turn to hit as many times as you just swung. So you could swing 16 times and almost kill the big bad, but then you roll and miss, and then it's the big bad's time to hit you guys back 16 times.
Ouch. Okay.
So you kind of so some people will like try and like min max and be like, okay, how can I make sure that I never miss or I never make it the DM's turn? But then there's also mechanics like in there's what's called fear, which I can spend fear tokens, which you gain from how people roll. If they roll bad, you'll get fear tokens basically. I can exchange fear tokens to be able to move right now rather than wait until it's my turn.
Okay. This is sounding very much like it's trying to incentivize a more like cinematic experience where you're punching them and then the bad guy just like sort of shakes it off and starts punching back for a while until
you punch the guy and he retaliates immediately, just swings his sword back, stuff like that.
No, that's cool.
Awesome.
All right, well, let's let you plug your website one more time and then we'll close out. Awesome.
Well, my website, if you want to check me out, is knightscastle.org, which is KNIGHTSCASTLE.org. And you can check out a bunch of my stuff there, some detail on the world and a bunch of different things there. Free consultation. You want to talk to me in a bunch of free.
All right, cool. Thanks, Casey. It was great having you on the show.
Yeah, thank you.
Hope you liked listening to Casey talk about Liara and his Knight Castle life coach service. If you're interested in the life coach service, there's a link in the episode description for you to check it out online. We've also reached the part of setting the stage where I need more guest interviews. So if you'd like to be a guest, there's a link in the episode description where you can fill out a survey to come on the show. So please come on the show, or if you know someone who might be a good fit, send that link to them, and maybe I'll end up interviewing them, and you'll hear about them in a few weeks. And as always, this episode is sponsored by Darren. If you'd like to be a sponsor on Patreon, there is a link in the episode description for you to do just that. Thank you for listening.